Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Addis Dialogue. Today on the show, we're going to be delving into Africa's fight against hunger and malnutrition, as these challenges continue to threaten lives and livelihoods across different countries on the continent. Today on the show, we're going to be delving into why some of context-specific approaches are so critical in our approach to dealing with the different aspects of malnutrition, and especially when it comes to Africa's blueprint, CAADP, and how it is driving growth and transformation. My guest today is Dr. Namukolo Covic. She is from the International Livestock Research Institute. She is the Director General's representative to Ethiopia. I'm your host, Shifara Olaiko. Do stay with us. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you very much for having me.
Absolutely. So whenever we talk about the issues of malnutrition, many say that context-specific approaches are so critical. So my first question would be, why is it so critical to adopt context-specific approaches when dealing with the triple burden of malnutrition? Why are they so critical?
I mean, the triple burden of malnutrition really is quite devastating. As you know, we have undernutrition. This is manifests in different ways.
Yeah.
In our case here in Ethiopia, it's high levels of stunting, which are children that are too short for their age. But we are also having micronutrient deficiencies that we call hidden hunger because we don't see it. And then we have the overweight and obesity that is increasing. So that is our triple burden of malnutrition. Under different contexts, what you need to do to address these challenges might be different. For example, if you look at pastoralist settings, they consume more milk, usually when it is available, a little bit of meat once in a while. The conditions are different. If you go to another setting where milk is not available, something else might be available. And so for each one of those contexts, when you need to address undernutrition, what you do is different. Okay. And so it is not possible to come into every setting on this continent and have the same solution. Sometimes, even when we bring the right solution, you might find that there are traditional practices that prevent people from actually using those solutions. For example, where I come from in Zambia, in my culture, when I was growing up, we were told young girls are not supposed to eat eggs.
Oh,
and
that's
yet
too bad.
An egg is really packed with nutrients.
Yeah.
So even if eggs were to be there, the children would not be given those eggs because traditionally it was not acceptable. Things have changed now, but that just gives you an example of why context matters. You have to look at the specific context and think about what you need to do in that particular context. This extends to even issues of what foods to produce in a particular area, what type of livestock, where there is livestock. All these are context-specific challenges.
Wow, interesting. Thank you so much for bringing that cultural issue up, because as you know, despite the number of the different frameworks, be it continental framework or international framework, all aimed at ending hunger, there are still persistent challenges. So let's also talk about some of these persistent structural and policy level challenges that still hinder the practice of meaningful progress when it comes to addressing the issues of hunger and malnutrition. Could you tell me some of these structural and policy level issues that should be properly dealt with? Are there barriers to these efforts of coming up with the solutions to the issues at hand?
Actually, ironically, currently on the African continent, our policy environment is quite good. Over the years, We've talked about food and nutrition policies. We've talked about agricultural investment policies and what have you. So when you look at our policy structures, they actually look good. There are areas that need attention, and they vary again according to context in different countries. But the bigger challenge that we have at the moment is not so much policy, but more our inability to implement the policies we already have effectively. Mm-hmm. And the challenge there is really around investments. We are dealing with an era where we've got budgetary constraints by governments because of poverty and what have you. The revenue base for many African countries is quite limited. And so investment at the moment is a much bigger problem than policy. There are areas of policy that need to be addressed indeed, but with the policies we already have, if we have the right amounts of investments and the right type of investments, we would go much, much further.
Interesting. Talking about investment, as you know, Dr. Namukolo, how does CAADP-aligned national agricultural investment plans are contributing positive share to the realization of SDG, Sustainable Development Goals, SDG 2, such as zero hunger across the different countries on the continent of Africa?
So CAADP, which is the Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Program, if you look at the program, it is actually intended to address SDG 2 in particular, but it also addresses Agenda 2063 of the African Union. It recognizes the fact that the African continent depends quite heavily on agriculture to drive economic growth. And therefore, CAADP is specifically designed to promote an agriculture-led development, but also to reduce poverty in the process while addressing and eliminating hunger. That is really what SDG 2 is about. So CAADP is the continental program through which the African Union and African Union member states are actually trying to address SDG 2. Now, under CAADP, you have now each country develops a national agricultural investment plan. And this is where that investment angle again comes in. What African Union member states have agreed to is to spend at least 10% of their GDP on agriculture-related developments. And so that's where our challenge is.
Okay.
Many countries are failing to meet that 10% that we are looking for. And then, of course, we have the CAADP biannual review process, which is part of a continental mutual accountability program. And so by having the CAADP biannual review, there is a level of accountability that is being expected from each national government to meet the commitments that they have made on CAADP.
Talking about the CAADP biennial performance review, I think it's been one of the tools for accountability and monitoring. In this regard, how successful has it been so far in holding the different countries on the continent of Africa accountable in their agricultural commitments, and how can this be used as the evidence be used as a drive for better future?
So when we look at the CAADP biennial review process, we have the CAADP results framework 2015, on which the CAADP biennial review process is built. So the indicators were decided and were agreed upon. We have a scorecard that is being used by the African Union. So each country, when the biannual review comes, each country has a scorecard that shows how the country is doing on the different indicators that are part of the biannual review process. What we see is that countries have struggled to meet the targets. So we see some progress on some of the indicators, but not enough to meet the targets. So often what we hear is about it is useless, we are not even meeting the targets and stuff like that. But I think we need to also look at where are we making progress, where have we actually made some progress, where we are failing to even make progress or failing to have the rate of progress that is required, then we need to ask ourselves. And that's where CAADP becomes a really important tool, because then we should be asking ourselves as African countries, what can we do better? What can we do different? It's not in I have failed to meet the CAADP BR target. It is in what can I do different? What could we do better in order to accelerate progress to meet those targets better? I think those lessons that CAADP BR give us, to me, are more important than crying about not having met the targets.
That's interesting, because you focus on the positive aspects rather than dwelling on the negative.
Progress is about keeping going forward. And when you fail to reach those landmarks, progress is also about asking the right questions on what should we do different in order to move forward better. If it is all negative, what you end up doing is you stop trying.
Right.
And that, I don't think, is what anybody on this continent should even consider.
Exactly.
Stopping to try should not be an option.
Yes, yeah. That's true. So still staying on CAADP, as you know, Ethiopia has been recognized as a CAADP champion. What does this recognition mean at both continental and country levels? And how can this be leveraged to further development, innovation, things like that, in a coordinated manner?
I think at country level, first, it should be a source of pride because it's a recognition of the efforts that the government has made in the agriculture sector. So it should be a source of pride, but also a source of inspiration to do even better.
Yeah.
At continental level, it then becomes a source of inspiration to other countries to also try to do better and do more. So there is a win-win type situation that is in it. The other thing is, when a country is recognized as a champion, I think the implication is, what can Ethiopia do in that role to encourage development within Ethiopia itself? Because you've been recognized as a champion.
Yeah.
You want to show value, you want to show why you should be recognized as such. So that becomes an inspiration for you to do even better. But at the same time, you then, it's almost like it's a positive feedback loop, if you will. You've been recognized, so you want to do better in order to be almost like befitting of that recognition. And then use that recognition to actually reach out to other countries to say, look what we are doing, and in doing so, positively affect the other country. On the CAADP biannual review side, Ethiopia is one of the countries that has been doing better in terms of the CAADP biannual review process. So what it tells us is where can we do even better? So again, being a champion, Ethiopia could champion looking at those lessons that I was talking about. Where have we not done well in our CAADP biennial review scorecard? How can we do differently? How can we do better? So there's a lot of lessons to be learned. Issues like the Green Legacy Development Agenda for Ethiopia is really quite a commendable program that should be a source of pride, but also a source of inspiration for other African countries. Just imagine. I like being positive, as you have said earlier. Just imagine if the entire continent adopted a similar green legacy development initiative like we've got here in Ethiopia. Imagine here, what have we said, 40 billion trees or 50 billion trees or something that we can plant? What would that translate to if every African country tried to do that?
Wow.
You can have quite a significant impact. So I think there's gains for the country, but there's also potential gain for the continent as a whole.
That's a great idea. Thank you so much for bringing up the Green Legacy Initiative, because as you know, it's been exemplary, and other countries are also emulating this green initiative. In this regard, how are other African countries trying to take some lessons from Ethiopia, be it in terms of this initiative or in terms of its CAADP activities? Of course, you touched up on it, but if you want to add more on that.
I think they are watching, is what I can say.
Yeah.
What I have noticed is recently when we had the UN Food Systems Summit Stocktech preparation meeting for the Africa region in Nairobi, what I noticed is that in that process, Ethiopia featured quite frequently in the sessions, the different discussion sessions, implying that other African countries are watching and looking at what Ethiopia is doing. We do have, for example, at ILRI, we currently have a project where we are working with the Ministry of Agriculture, the Agriculture Transformation Institute, Ministry of Health, the core stakeholders that are part of the UN Food Systems Summit process in Ethiopia, the Ethiopia Food Systems Transformation and Nutrition Roadmap. My colleague, Dr. Getachew Legese, is leading a project there where we've developed a monitoring and evaluation framework for Ethiopia, for the Ethiopian roadmap. Now, why I'm saying it is being noticed is that we now have an additional element of that project where we are taking the Ethiopian case study to work with and contribute towards the next biannual review process under the Kampala Declaration this time. You understand?
Yeah.
So that is noticing. This is why I'm saying I think the efforts are being noticed, and it is a good thing for Ethiopia. It's a good thing for the continent as a whole, because we are learning from each other.
Exactly. Yeah. How are African governments integrating nutrition-sensitive agricultural practices and also climate-smart approaches in their national development agendas, and how should it continue in the future, as part of beefing up this agricultural transformation processes on the continent?
So, I think in short, it will be not possible for us to meet our nutrition goals without addressing our climate challenges. If we do not address our climate challenges, we will have a problem producing enough food. We will have a problem producing the diversity of foods that we require for better diets and nutrition. Because the better diets and nutrition is an outcome of the agriculture sector. So the agriculture sector has to develop in the right direction, because we can also develop in such a way that it doesn't help. We have to develop in such a way that our agriculture sectoral development leads to better diets and nutrition. Now, if we're going to have shortages of food because of climate disasters, if we are going to have crops that are not adapted to our current climate realities, we will not be able to deliver neither on diets, let alone on nutrition. And so adopting a climate smart approach to agricultural development is not just something that we should do, it is a must. Because if we do not do it, we will not be able to deliver better diets and nutrition. We may in the short term see some gains, but in the long term for coming generations, what will they eat? On the science side, for example, we know that our climate is busy changing. I mean, it's not even a question of it's going to change, it has already changed. We can feel it every day. And so the situation that we have now is our scientists have to think of not just today's challenges, but tomorrow's climate challenges as well. We should be investing in research to make sure that we generate solutions for tomorrow so that that food security can continue. Now, on the nutrition side, I think one of the challenges is the issue of when you look at the African continent, the majority of the people consume very low levels of animal source foods. But we also know that you need just small quantities of animal source foods can make a difference. We talked about an egg earlier on. Exactly. An egg per day or every other day for a child makes a big difference. But that egg must become accessible. And if it becomes accessible, it should become accessible in a climate smart way. Because if we don't do that, sustainability is a problem, productivity is a problem. Yep. If productivity is a problem, people will not be able to afford the eggs because they will be too expensive. You can have a whole lot of agricultural activities that you can talk around that. We need to produce a diverse food basket for the family. It's not all about starchy staples. It's not all about meat, because you can also overconsume, right? Yes. It's about consuming. It should be balanced. It should be the right amounts. And for the Ethiopia in that regard, there is the food-based dietary guidelines that were developed and released in 2022, which is also part of this whole transformation process. Let's transform. We need climate smart production practices and solutions to be able to produce that diverse food basket, without which better diets and nutrition is not possible.
I know that you have an upcoming summit, so could you tell me more about what the summit is and also what's to be expected out of this summit?
The summit is the UN Food Systems Summit, and it's specifically the Stocktake Summit. We had a Stocktake in 2023, 2 years after the 2021 summit. This is the second Stocktake that will take place here in Ethiopia. It is being hosted jointly by the Italian government and the Ethiopian government, and we have the UN Food System Summit Coordination Hub as part of the coordinated hosting of the event. Okay. It will take place here in Ethiopia from the 27th of July to the 29th of July. And before and after that, a lot of different stakeholders are organizing side events and meetings and the like. It's a global event.
Yeah.
So Ethiopia should be proud
as a host country.
As a host country, because I'd like to think it's coming here because of the same thing. There's some good lessons to be learned.
Yeah.
But also, it's the whole world is coming to us.
Okay.
So both as Ethiopia and as Africans, we ought to be proud to be hosting this year in Ethiopia. In terms of why the summit, in 2021 we had the UN Food Systems Summit, and the summit was actually brought on board in recognition, going back to where we started, in recognition of the challenges of us meeting our SDG. The issue was we are not on track as a collective globally to meeting the SDG goals. So to try and accelerate progress, the UN Food Systems Summit was actually put in place to try and galvanize efforts to do better towards our 2030 goals. And so countries have developed pathways and roadmaps to transform food systems along multiple fronts. One is to deliver better diets and nutrition, safe food,
exactly.
a better balanced food basket for everybody, but also to do so sustainably. We were talking about climate area. There are issues around equity, all of those things being addressed, resilience, poverty, and what have you. They are all part of the goals of the UN Food Systems Summit. They're really SDG goals. So countries developed pathways and roadmaps. After 2 years, there was a stock take to look at, are we making progress? What are the challenges? And this is the second stake talk now that is going to take place here in Ethiopia. So we're looking forward to to receiving
definitely it's going to be a huge continental and global event.
Yes.
So obviously we're going to cover this international event as well. Let's also talk about the role of CGIAR towards the implementation of SDG 2, especially when it comes to zero hunger. In this regard, could you briefly walk me through some of the contributions achieved so far?
Oh, it's a lot. CGIAR has got 15 international agricultural research
huge,
institutes,
right? Yeah,
so it's quite
huge.
a big undertaking. It's the largest publicly funded research consortium. The focus is really to address SDG goals, address food security, nutrition and health, address poverty alleviation, address gender equity, youth issues, address climate adaptation and mitigation. So already the things that we have been talking about earlier on. So currently across different programs, we call them science programs and accelerators, we are addressing a lot of these changes. We are addressing issues around breeding, both crops and livestock breeds and varieties that can actually address moving towards climate smart agriculture development. We're doing a lot on crops, we are doing a lot on landscapes, even sustainable farming. We're looking at quite a number of things, policy innovations, climate action within this broader agriculture perspective. And so in terms of progress that we have made, when we look at a lot of the crop varieties that are being used globally, even in the global north, a lot of the varieties can be traced back into CGIAR research.
So it's all integrated, right?
It's all integrated. Here in Ethiopia, some of the varieties that we are using now for this wheat initiative and what have you, we work with our national partners, the Ethiopian Institute of Agriculture Research, the regional institutions. But we have contributed to development of those varieties that are helping us towards producing more. On the livestock, we are doing a lot because, as you know, livestock is usually looked at as a negative on the climate issue. And so the efforts that we are making is to work towards reducing the climate impacts and the environmental impacts of livestock. Better productivity, which would help us work with fewer animals for the same amount of food being produced. Also looking at issues, for example, around genetics, the right breeds for the climate that we are facing, looking at the right production practices, the right forages. We are even now having a project here at ILRI in Ethiopia where we are using the gene bank resources that we have here in Ethiopia to try and identify methane reducing compounds. And that would help a lot in the future to reduce the climate footprint of livestock. But there's a lot that we are doing, and we are being very deliberate at the moment to, for example, here in Ethiopia, we have mapped our research to the National Food Systems Transformation Pathway and Roadmap to make sure that our research contributes. Continentally, we've actually been, we were engaged in the process that has now developed the Kampala Declaration, and we are aligning ourselves deliberately to make sure that our research contributes to the CAADP process. And so, yeah, there's a lot that is going on.
Exactly.
And yeah, I think the continent has a lot of potential. I am a very Pan-Africanist optimist in that we've got a continental agriculture program that all our member states have agreed to. I mean, if you think of the fact that we have got 54 countries on this continent, if we are all trying to move in a better direction, it's really, there's a lot of potential there to be leveraged. But also, remember, we also have a climate strategy and action plan for Africa as well. That also speaks to us finding solutions for climate adaptation and resilience. So there's a lot that we have to work with. The issue is, how do we do it? Can we make sure that it actually takes us faster towards reaching the goals that we have, both as countries, such as Ethiopia, but also as a continent? And in doing so, maybe we can help the rest of the world as well.
Wow, I'm so impressed. You know, you have a lot on your plate, but I'm so glad that you're properly managing it. It's really impressive and appreciable. Dr. Namukolo Covic, thank you so much for coming to our studio and for these wonderful insights. I really, really appreciate it.
And thank you very much for having me.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, with that, we come to the end of today's program. Many thanks to you as well for having been with us so far. Until I see you next time with yet another program, it's a goodbye.